Well, hi, my name is Eric Carter. I'm an associate professor of special education at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, and here speaking to you from a faith conference in Connecticut, where our conversation has been how do we increase the welcome and supports for people with disabilities and their families within the life of their faith community. So as a faculty member at Vanderbilt, one of the things that I focus most often in my scholarship and teaching is really how do we design services and supports to help people with disabilities and their families truly flourish in all dimensions of their life. And so sometimes that means our work is focusing on helping them be part of the life of their school or the life of their workplace or the life of their community, really helping their aspirations be surrounded by supports and opportunities. And inevitably, if you talk with people with disabilities and their families, you're going to end up at some point hearing probably about the importance of faith in their lives and their desire to find a community that will welcome them, support them, and find a place for their particular gifts. And that's been the theme of our conference today, is really looking at what does it look like to offer welcome and hospitality within the context of a faith community. And then similarly, in terms of service systems, how can they ensure that the spiritual and religious needs of the people that they're charged to support are supported well. And so half of our conversation has been really about what happens within the walls of a congregation on Sunday morning or Saturday morning, or those times that people gather together to worship and learn and fellowship and eat together and all the things that happen within a faith community. And so we've really been thinking about what would it look like to be an inclusive congregation? What would be the elements or dimensions of that? And so one of the things that has been really helpful in my thinking about it has been sort of a series of prepositions that I learned from Bill Gaventa, who talked about this evolution of ministry apart from people with disabilities and really shifting to ministry to and ministry among, ministry with, and ministry by people with disabilities. So we don't just think about people with disabilities as the focus of our ministry efforts or the recipients of our services and supports, but we really look at how we sort of weave people with disabilities into the life of our congregation and find a place for their gifts and their strengths and their relationships and friendships and their contributions. And so that's been one of the challenges for us today, is what might that really look like? What would be the starting points for those kinds of efforts? And it seems like any response has to address some of the common barriers that really prevent people with disabilities and their families from being welcome within congregations. So there might be an element of looking at accessibility. Are buildings and our facilities accessible? Can people actually get in? Are there barriers of steps or doorways or other things that need to be addressed? So often there's architectural barriers that need to be considered and reflected upon, and movements taken to overcome those particular barriers. There's lots of reflection tools out there that are available that you might draw upon to reflect on your congregation's accessibility. But probably architectural accessibility is not the biggest barrier for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Really, the biggest barrier is the lack of invitations that we extend. So how do we begin to think about who's living in our communities and the neighborhoods that surround a particular congregation, and how do we begin to extend personal invitations to them to let them know that we'd love to have you to be part of our congregation. We want to learn with you about how to support you well and find a place for your gifts. And so I think one of the first steps for many congregations is to begin to extend new invitations to people with disabilities and their families, to let them know that they'll be welcomed and that their presence is really desired. But as those invitations become extended, what we really want to do is make sure that we're not just focusing on increasing presence, but really making sure people with disabilities have a presence within our congregations. So not setting up separate ministries or separate worship services or separate programs for people with disabilities, but really looking at how do we design our activities and our programs and our services with everyone in mind right from the outset. So then we're not figuring out how to retrofit or adapt services in different ways, but really keeping people with disabilities in the mind at the forefront of all of our planning. So I think we want to instead focus more on creating inclusive programs and inclusive supports and moving away from sort of the emphasis that's been present in the past of separate disability ministries. And I think that's really important because it's very easy for people with and without disabilities to be present within the same faith community and never really encounter one another, never really have the opportunity to meet, to get to know, to support, to exchange gifts with one another if we're always having parallel programs for different people. So often addressing sort of increasing inclusive ministries really begins with raising awareness of the presence of people with disabilities within the congregation and beyond, sort of changing expectations for how we do services sometimes or the kinds of supports that we're going to make available, and really trying to shift attitudes within a congregation, that our congregation really is a congregation for everyone and not for a certain segment of our particular community. So a really important aspect of those raising of awareness efforts really comes from the leadership of the congregation, that the vision that they cast from the pulpit can really be instrumental in sort of equipping congregation members with the confidence to welcome better and to support better. So I think that's another important aspect of it. But part of that extending invitations really is going to often require working closely with service systems. And many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are supported in group homes or supported living facilities or other sorts of places in the community. And so there needs to be some dialogue between congregations and service providers about how supports can be exchanged. So people who are living in a group home, for example, have the transportation that they need to get to the congregation of their choice, or have the supports available from the service system or from the congregation to make that inclusion work really well. So service systems are really committed to promoting the inclusion and self-determination and natural supports of people with disabilities. Then one wonderful place to put those principles in action is through partnerships with local congregations. What better place to find a sense of belonging and a place to share your gift and valued roles than within a congregation. So for service systems, there's probably some more attention that we need to give to addressing people's spiritual support needs within our planning and assessment processes, and finding ways of identifying what's most important to the people we serve and who in our community can help help those aspirations become realities. So what we envision today in this conference is efforts on the congregation side of things to increase invitations, expand our welcome, and deepen our hospitality to people with disabilities. And on the service side of things, to make sure we're attending to all dimensions of the lives of the people we serve. And then together we can work alongside people with disabilities and their families to make our congregations much more welcoming places for all of our communities.
Thank you very much.